Good morning, everyone. Today we are going to see the last topic in the second unit, that is AJAX. AJAX means asynchronous JavaScript and XML, which is a technique used in web development to allow web pages to update content asynchronously. That means without waiting for the server. Okay, then exchanging small amounts of the data with the server behind the scenes, that is in the background it is happening. This means you can update parts of a web page without having to reload the entire page. Without refreshing the entire page, you can reload the parts of the web page. And basics of Ajax, it will be using making it, we are calling it to be as an asynchronous, as Ajax requests will be happening in the background, which will be allowing a page to remain responsive without freezing while waiting for the data from the server. And it uses is it generally relies on JavaScript for making HTTP requests to communicate with the server. It also uses XML or and JSON. That is, originally we used XML and JSON. That is because of its simplicity and efficiency. Nowadays, it is commonly used data format. How it works is, a user whenever a user triggers an event like clicking a button, JavaScript sends an asynchronous HTTP request, mm, or fetch method to the server, and the server processes the request, retrieves the data from the database, and the server sends back the response, usually in JSON or XML format. JavaScript updates the contents on the web page without reloading the entire page. This is how Ajax works. Here is a small example of Ajax with XML HTTP request. Usually in the beginning it was used XML HTTP request only. So that's why this is an example which is demonstrating using XML HTTP request. Here is a web page. The title is Ajax example. In the body, we are giving a button, adding a button. The ID of the button is load data button. So here in the logic, in the script, I'm going to use ID, and that is for load data. The button is load data button. In the script, as I told you, I am trying to get the element by its ID. That is, I am trying to get the button through its ID and add an event listener to it. That is, when you click on that button, load load data button, a function will be invoked, which will be having this execution statement. That is, we are trying to create an XML HTTP request object for that, and configure it using get request for the URL. That is, open, get that URL, and load that, onload that function. What to do when the request is successful, you need to mention in the function. Okay, on the load of this URL, what has to be done? It has to show the status. If the status is 200, then it has to give the response from the server, whatever response is being fetched. Okay, that data, that response is in this data. And here we are trying to get a document dot get element by ID result. In the result, we are trying to use parse it, parse the elements using inner HTML element. In this way, we are trying to change the elements using inner HTML and send the request to the server. Okay, and let's see how it is working. Here it contains a button load data and a div to display the fetched data. So here JavaScript, when the button is clicked, it triggers an Ajax request using HTTP XML HTTP request object. The open method sets up the request to retrieve the data from an API. Like when it is, the URL is open. Once the data is received, that is using onload, the JSON response is parsed and part of the web page is updated with the received data without reloading the page. And now the modern approach is using fetch method. We can do it instead of XML HTTP request. We can use fetch method. That is, document dot get element by ID, use load button. ID is load data button, and we are adding a event listener to the click, and we are invoking the function. In the function, I am trying to fetch this URL dot then response dot json, where it gets the data. Result is stored here and it will be displayed here. Okay. The key differences is fetch method is more modern. It is cleaner API for making AJAX request. It returns promises and supports easier handling of success or failure scenarios compared to the older XML HTTP request. Thank you all. Keep learning.